Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever State of the Band address. My name is Greg Troyan. I am the lead singer and founder of Lipstick. For those of you who don't know the band, first off, let me begin by saying I am surprised you clicked this video because most people don't actively pursue original music from bands they haven't heard of, so hats off to you. There's going to be a few topics discussed in this video, so I will include time skips in the description if you want to jump around. Let me begin with a brief history of the band. When I was in high school, I was in a glam rock band called Dyslexia. It was very similar to Kiss. 2 guitars, bass, drums, and all 4 members sang lead vocals. I was the rhythm guitar player. The band didn't last very long because the lead guitar player and bassist got into a fist fight backstage at one of our gigs and we got kicked out of the venue. So that was the end of that. After leaving Dyslexia, I was left with a few songs I really liked, but there wasn't really much of a local scene in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, at least for original music in the vein of what I wanted to do. This was around 2007 and 2008, so glam rock was not big in Cleveland at the time, but there were a bunch of bands in Sweden that were exploding. The press called it the new wave of Swedish sleaze, and you had bands like Crash Diet, Sister, Reckless Love, and a couple American bands like Dirty Penny, bringing back this very aggressive, Motley Crue meets Skid Row kind of 80s hair metal sound. And all those bands, as great as they were, they all pretty much looked and sounded exactly the same. So I decided I wanted to do something different. I wanted to put an emphasis on 70s glam rock bands like Slade, and focus on bright colors since all the Swedish bands were going with black. And I really wanted to focus on positive and empowering lyrical themes. I have eclectic tastes, so while I love glam, I also love stuff like the Beatles, Jim Steinman, and Thin Lizzy, so I wanted to have a classic hard rock sound with a 70s glam image. Overcoming things like rape and child abuse at the hands of my stepfather matured me at an early age and made me really appreciate the simple things in life like health and safety, so I wanted to be a force of optimism in a music scene that was overall pretty dark and bleak. This was the emo era, following the era of grunge and nu metal, so it had been a really long time since something overwhelmingly positive was put into the public's consciousness like that. I spent a few years developing the look, sound, and concept for Lipstick, and in 2011 I hired some local musicians and a producer to produce a demo. The band, like most American rock musicians at the time, didn't understand the music and played metallic hard rock songs as if they were reggae songs. They had no feel for it, despite being great players, and the producer couldn't direct them either. So I fired the entire team and called up my friend Billy Morris. Billy Morris is a guy who is huge in the Cleveland scene. He used to play with Paul Gilbert, Warrant, Quiet Riot, the list goes on and on. I've known him since my high school days when I met him at a barbecue. I was 16, wearing a Poison t-shirt, and we got to talking. One thing leads to another and he invites me to jam with him, and then I started singing with him as a guest vocalist at local shows. So after I fired all of the other people involved in the project, I called him up and asked if he would help me record. At first, I was a little intimidated to ask him because of his pedigree, but to his credit, he jumped at the chance and offered to produce the album, as well as play guitar and bass on it. He was really excited to help my vision come to life, and though we were good friends before recording that album, we became lifelong friends through the year we spent recording it. Billy had actually asked me to become the manager for his recording studio, Revolution Recordings, and I did that for a little while, but when the album was finally done, I realized I reached the point where I was done with the Cleveland music scene and decided to relocate. My top picks were New York City, LA, Stockholm, or Nashville. New York, LA, and Nashville were our industry cities, and Stockholm was the epicenter of the glam scene at the time, but because I didn't speak Swedish and the cost of living in Nashville was comparable to Cleveland, I ended up choosing Nashville. When I went to Nashville in late 2012, I very quickly found a lineup for Lipstick based upon the strength of the demo I did with Billy, and in January of 2013, Lipstick was playing club gigs in Nashville. After our third gig, a battle of the bands where we came in first place, we came under the attention of a major record label, and less than a year after I moved to Nashville, I was meeting with the VP of a major record label about a possible deal for my weird and colorful glam rock band. Ultimately, the guy decided our songwriting wasn't strong enough and wanted us to move in a poppier direction. However, he did say that one song I had written, Rock and Roll Forever, was a hit song, and that if I could write 3 more as catchy as that, I'd have a record deal. So after the meeting, we had some lineup changes, and my now best friend and musical partner, Steven Smith, joined the band as bassist and became the other major creative force in the band. Most of the band was run all by me. All of the marketing, booking, songwriting was pretty much all me, but once Steve joined the band, it became a 50-50 partnership. We ended up playing a bunch of shows in 2013 and quickly became the hot new band in Nashville, consistently drawing big crowds, and ended up even doing some freelance work as a bass player in other projects, so I was making a lot of really good connections all over the city. I ended up meeting a lot of my heroes in the entertainment industry. I don't want to name drop as it doesn't seem classy to do so, but let's just say that I got to develop friendships and business relationships with people I idolized as a kid in the music, television, and film industries. The band was doing really well, and we decided to start selling the Billy Morris demo at shows as our first album. And it ended up selling really, really well, especially for a local band. We quickly ran out of inventory of those and had to print a special edition of the album with bonus tracks to include stuff from the current lineup, and then that album sold really well too. For a band as new as we were on the scene, we were on fire, and it seemed like only a matter of time until we broke it big. However, there were some issues. We had a lot of issues with lineup changes. Other than myself, Steve, and our mascot, Mr. Cool, we really haven't had consistent band members. We've had people stay for a few months, and we're still friends with all of our fill-in guys, but we didn't find people who really understood the vision. Most Americans are only familiar with 80s glam, and 70s glam is much more of a British phenomenon. So a lot of the musicians just don't get it the same way the guys in Cleveland didn't get it. A lot of them don't understand that dressing goofy can actually be a way of being cool. Yankees tend to have a problem with kits, and it's valid not to like kits, but also explains why we had trouble keeping bandmates. We needed people who could look the part and play the part, and given that the guitar players had to follow the guy from Quiet Riot and Warrant, it was a pretty hefty order. Now, I want to say that I play with some great musicians, and everyone who has ever played in Lipstick is still someone I consider a close friend, except for one asshole guitar player who hates my guts. But other than that one guy, every former guitar player we've ever had, I could pick up the phone, call them up, and ask if they want to jam at a show as a one-off thing, and they would say yes and show up and be all smiles. For me, friendship is perhaps the most important part of the human experience, connections with other humans. And artistic differences are not worth losing friendships. I'm glad to say that I still have all of my former bandmates as friends, except for that one asshole, but whatever, he's an asshole. That leads us up to the second album. At this point, the band was licking its wounds from constant lineup changes and was evolving into a P-Funk kind of thing, whereas a cast of thousands led by a couple of dudes. I was the George Clinton of the band, and Steve was the Bootsy Collins. So we recorded and released a second album, which featured almost all the past and current Lipstick members. Casey Horn, Jace McLean from Nuclear Bubba Rap, Billy Morris, Chris Lambrick, Phil Schaus from the Gene Simmons Band, Morgan Bosman, Greg Lorcano, Kyle Hebert from Dragon Ball Z, Chase McCutcheon, Josh Dent, Tom Pappas from Super Drag, Steve Edwards from Blue Matches, Eric Pentecoff, Dougie Licks. Just an amazing, amazing cast of musicians on that album. We were really proud of the work that we did with all of those great musicians, and we were sure, 100% positive, that Lipstick 2 was going to be much more successful than Lipstick 1. We were not right about that. At this point, Lipstick Draw isn't as good as it was when we first started. We haven't played as many shows because our lineup isn't consistent, and our new album is much poppier than the first. We have some people who like it much more than the first album, and the album has sold, but it has sold nowhere near as well as the first album. And it looks like the band is in the stereotypical sophomore slump, where a band's second album is considered a failure after a brilliant first album. I will say this right now, that I think Lipstick 2 is a much better sounding album than Lipstick 1, and the high points on Lipstick 2 are some of my favorite songwriting ever. However, it is not the direction our fan base wanted us to go in. The people who came into our shows loved our experimentation, but overall, they liked our heavier stuff and wanted us to go in a heavier direction. The guitar tones on Lipstick 2 are heavier than the first albums, but the songs may have been too poppy for the fan base. There are songs that the fans really like Stop, which is extremely poppy, but I think they prefer a harder album overall. I've talked with a lot of fans, and this seems to be the overall consensus. People like Lipstick 1 better than Lipstick 2. So, with that taken into account, we're going back into the studio and recording a new album. This album is going to be much simpler than the previous two albums and will feature less experimentation and a greater focus on hard rock. I personally enjoy writing the poppier stuff, but I know that as a vocalist I sound better on the grittier hard rock stuff than some of the more poppy material, and Lipstick has always shined as a hard rock band. The new album will feature a new look, a harder sound, And I think everyone who was disappointed in the second album will find a lot to love in Lipstick 3. Now, we do have a lot of fans who like the new direction, and Lipstick 3 will probably take a little while to record. So we plan on releasing a special EP of Lipstick 2 bonus tracks in the middle of this coming year. For fans who like this album, we're going to have a lot of cool alternate versions of songs and probably a new song or two that we're going to release for a super discounted and cheap price, like $5 or something like that. So for the people who love the album, they can fully experience a different side to it and can hopefully hold them over until Lipstick 3 comes out. As far as other news with the band, we're going to be booking as many shows and playing out as much as we're able to, but I'm currently involved with a few other projects at this time, as is Steve. My day job is in the healthcare industry, and I'm working on a very awesome project that I can't discuss publicly, but I can say I'm doing some good work for the community. I'm also doing some songwriting for Michael Lee Smith from Stars, and I'm working on helping him with a solo album. I've also got a book that I started about 2 years back that I'm finally going to get around to finishing, which is a book about Elvis Presley, and it's about 70% done, so I hope to finish that by the end of the year as well. Steve has an upcoming album with his solo project Regdar and the Fighters, and we're expecting a summer release on that, and there is possibly going to be a Greg Troyan solo EP by the end of the year as well. So even though we might not have a new Lipstick album this year, we've got a lot of stuff in the works. Now, in 2018, we realized it's pretty much impossible to find the band in iTunes or Spotify. Even if you search for Lipstick Band, we are the first result, but some people are having trouble with that. So to make it easy, we've made ourselves Lipstick Generation on iTunes, Spotify, and other forms of music media. So whenever you want to find anything lipstick related, just look up Lipstick Generation. The band is still called Lipstick, but for purposes of finding us on the internet, just type in Lipstick Generation. Now, the big news that I want to discuss is what we're going to be doing over the course of this coming year. We are starting a new podcast called The Lipstick Panel. It is going to be a weekly ranking show where Steve and myself get together with some guest panelists and just rank a subject. So, for example, the first episode, we're going to be ranking the songs on the first Kiss album from best to worst. And so we've got some really awesome episodes coming up. The first 4 episodes, we have ranking the songs on the first Kiss album with Kyle Hebert from Dragon Ball Z and Tyson Leslie from Vixen. The second episode, we're going to be ranking the episodes of Rick and Morty with Jace McLean from Nuclear Bubble Wrap. The third episode, we're going to be ranking the songs from the Kiss album Hotter Than Hell with Joe Palmaccio, who mastered all the Kiss remasters, and also Dee Allen from Tall Dark Stranger. And the fourth episode of our show, we're going to be ranking the songs from the Final Fantasy I soundtrack with the hosts of Ultima Final Fantasy, Joseph DeGolier and Caleb Swice. This is sort of a way where we can vent out our nerdier side, while we really focus on keeping the music strictly hard rock. So we can let out our geek side through this podcast so it doesn't necessarily creep into the music, because I think that's a criticism we got from the second album of letting that creep into the music too much. So even if you're not a fan of the band, I think you're going to find a lot to enjoy with these podcasts. Great discussions, great guests, and, everyone loves Kiss. So come on, check it out. Let me just say thank you to everyone for your continued support over the years. In the past, I felt that Lipstick needed to exist because the music scene was lacking something positive and optimistic. But now that the grunge and emo eras are finally gone, there's not the same need for me to ensure that Lipstick exists. In the past, Lipstick felt more like a duty and a calling, but now I am putting an emphasis on just enjoying what I do and not putting so much pressure on the band to do well. And I think the band will do better because of it. I think my vocals will sound much better, and let's be honest, we all know there's room for some improvement there. And I think I've gotten better. And I think the band will get back on track and make all of those who believed in us since day one super proud to be our fans and friends. Well, everyone, that is the first ever State of the Band address. I appreciate all of you for listening. God bless.